Says Cultivate our motivation. There's a quotation from the Pali Suttas that will come a little bit later in the present chapter, but I wanted to read it as part of the motivation tonight. And here the Buddha said, there are, O monastics, these 6 roots of disputes. What 6? Here a monastic is 1, angry and vengeful, or 2, contemptuous and domineering, or 3, envious and miserly, or 4, deceitful and hypocritical, or 5, he has evil desires and wrong views, or 6, he adheres to his own views, holding them tenaciously and relinquishing them with difficulty. So I think most of us have been in disputes of this kind. We usually think of how other people have gotten caught in these 6 roots of dispute, but really the teaching the Buddha gave is how we get caught in them. So it's good to really review our actions, our relationships, and see when, analyze the various disputes we have gotten into and see which ones of these 6 apply. And then to see how each of the 6 is rooted in self-centeredness, thinking that we are more important than others, wanting to get our way even at the expense of others, and is rooted also in the self-grasping ignorance that creates an idea of the self that is untrue. And so it's very helpful to, when we're in a jam in our lives, to trace back the causes and see how the causes lie in our own minds. And then to form a very strong resolution to transform our minds. Because we want happiness and suffering. And because we want other people to have happiness and not suffering. And we know that our actions influence others. So the wonderful antidotes to these 6 causes of dispute were taught by the Buddha, and they're all rooted in the wisdom realizing emptiness that overcomes that self-grasping, and bodhicitta, the altruistic intention, which overcomes the self-centeredness. And so for the sake of ourselves and all living beings, let's develop a very strong determination to uproot those 2 demons that lie in our own mind. And to do that by practicing the path and attaining full awakening. So make that strong determination. Okay. So, you may wonder why I read this out of, we're on page 63, and this citation is on page 70, and we may or may not get there this evening. You may wonder why I chose to read this citation out of order. Well, as you probably know, the news all week has been centering on the possibility of a government shutdown. And just as I was getting ready to come at about 3 minutes, before 7 o'clock, the computer screen said that the House and Senate both adjourned without coming to an agreement. So the government shutdown starts at 12:01. Eastern. Yeah. So it will be, a little bit more than an hour. No, a couple of hours. Okay, so I was marveling how, you look puzzled. I do too. How can the government shut down? Yeah. How does it shut down? It shuts down because they haven't passed a funding bill. And what's going on, this has been in the news for quite a while, because they've been having trouble passing funding bills for a while, but they usually manage it somehow. This time they didn't. And the basic thing is that Trump wants $5 billion to build a wall. And a lot of people don't think that's a very good use of taxpayer money. Okay? And then other people say we definitely need that wall. And we should not budge an inch until the money comes through. And Trump last week said he would be proud to bring on a shutdown over the wall if Congress couldn't come to a resolution. But of course, now that they haven't come to a resolution, he's blaming it on the Democrats. But the Republicans are just as confused because all week he hasn't told them what his bottom line is or what other deals would be suitable. So everybody's been working in the dark. And he wanted them to change the rules in the Senate, which would be awful, to make it so that a simple majority of 50 votes rather than the usual 60 votes could pass it. But this afternoon, they couldn't, for a while, they couldn't even agree to open the debate on a bill that the House passed yesterday that is certain to fail in the Senate. They had a hard time getting it together to even get enough votes to open that debate on a bill that they know is going to fail. So Vice President Pence rushed to the Capitol to cast the deciding vote. So it was 48 to 47, not 51 to 49. So they didn't even have a simple majority. So even if they had changed the rules, they still wouldn't be able to pass the bill from the House that included $5 billion, 5.7 billion actually, for the wall. So, as I was preparing for the teachings and, reading what we were going to be discussing, this was right there. I don't know if we'll get there, but it's right there. And I thought, oh my goodness, you know, the 6 roots of disputes, because it's dispute that's prevented anything from advancing. And here the Buddha is talking about it in the teachings. So some people, of course, say that I shouldn't be talking about politics. I should stick to the Dharma. But I am sticking to the Dharma because I'm talking about, I just read you the quotation, the citation. It's from the Discourses of the Numbers, if you want to look it up. It's Sutta 6, line 30, or passage 36. So I'm talking about that. I'm talking about ethical conduct. I'm talking about compassion based on a sutra. Yeah. So I'm talking about the Dharma, and I'm giving as an example something that we all know about that's happening in our lives. So rather than make up an example that seems abstract to us, citing an example that is right here, right now, that is going to affect the entire country and probably the entire world, it makes sense to use that as an example to show the disadvantages of these 6 causes of disputes, and the wide reach they can have on the lives of many, many living beings. Yeah? And then if we can see that clearly from this example, then when we think of our own lives, yeah, and think when we get caught in these 6, in our own reality TV shows, then this is, this is the kind of effect our actions have on other people. Maybe not as great an effect because we don't have leadership positions in the country, but it's the same kind of mind, the same kind of effects that come from things. Okay, so that's why I think it's good to talk about examples that are real from our lives. And this is quite real now. So earlier today, Trump said that it would be a very long shutdown. So I don't know what he has planned.
He doesn't either.
He doesn't have his staff left.
Yeah, because, they all adjourned. They're all going home, the whole Congress, for the weekend. Trump is not going to go to Mar-a-Lago if there's a shutdown, although I bet he finds a way to go to Florida, because otherwise he'll be in D.C. alone. 800,000 people, yeah. So some people will be forced to work without getting paid until the bill is passed, and other people are furloughed, meaning that they can't go to work, meaning they will not get paid, meaning that if they were counting on that money for their family, they're not getting it even if they pass a bill because they didn't work. They're on furlough.
Well, Border Patrol.
Yeah, Border Patrol has to, huh?
Homeland Security.
Yeah, but Border Patrol has to work. So they're making some people work. The non-essential ones, quote, quote. Yeah, but they're considering border control essential. You mean even if they're on furlough?
Yes.
Oh.
The union will sue the government, and then they'll get the money, so they're going to be paid for not doing any work. So that's real functional.
Yeah. Okay, but there's a lot of the national parks were all going to be closed. So I don't think any of you were planning on going to Yosemite this weekend. But, all the people who were going to go to the national parks, including the Statue of Liberty, all their vacation plans have to be changed. So, yeah. Welcome to America. Pardon?
Yes.
Yeah, it happened one other time when Trump was in, but it only lasted 3 days. And then it happened in 2011, right after we went to Kala Chakra. And that time it was because the Republicans didn't want there to be an increased level of debt for the country, so they wouldn't support the spending bill. Of course, earlier this year, they passed a tax cut that increased the U.S. debt by I don't know how many trillions of dollars. Completely, what they said in 2011 was intolerable to them.
Number 4, deceitful and hypocritical.
Yeah, so it's interesting to look at this and see, which of these things apply to this situation and which people, because there's many different people involved in it. And of course, everybody's blaming other people and nobody's saying, we have anything to do with it. But meanwhile, a lot of people are suffering. Well, the people we elected are, exercising, pointing their fingers. Yeah. Okay. But the reason I think it's good we talk about this is when we get involved in disputes, to see how our behavior influences other people. We dig in our heels and we take a position, we dig in our heels and we say, I'm not budging. It's my way or the highway. And I don't care what happens to anybody else. We're going to do it my way. And, to see that our actions affect other people. And this is the kind of thing that happens. Okay? So, to bring the teaching home to ourselves eventually. So we'll go into this in more depth when we come to it. I just wanted to tantalize you at the beginning. Okay. But let's go back to page 63, working with fear, developing courage. So if you're afraid at all because there's a government shutdown, then this part of the chapter will be helpful to you. Okay? Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it, how we get stuck in other people's battles, even though we don't want to be. And we would much rather not be, then we have no option. We're in that situation. Okay, so working with fear, developing courage. So His Holiness says, above we briefly considered the 2 types of fear, one based on wisdom and the other that succumbs to panic. Okay, remember that? We talked about that. The first type of fear stems from reason and is healthy. Okay, so that's the fear, quote, quote, that's based on wisdom. Instead of fear, I think a better word would be caution or concern. One Tibetan word can have many different English translations. So the usual one is fear, but I think caution or concern or danger is better, okay? So the first kind of danger, stems from reason and is healthy, okay? And he gives an example. For example, when we light a fire, we are aware of the danger and take care to avoid it, okay? That fear protects us. The same as when the awareness of when you're merging on the highway and you have an awareness of the danger, that awareness of danger helps you be careful when you're merging on the highway. So that kind of awareness of danger or caution, however you want to translate it, is based on wisdom and is very good. It helps us. Okay. Similarly, when we correctly analyze the causes of cyclic existence, we have a wise fear of them, and that makes us conscientious about our moods and actions. This wisdom-based fear is important in daily life and on the path. Okay, so in daily life, being aware of potential danger, then we take care to avoid it. Yeah, and in terms of our spiritual practice, when we're aware, especially of the defects of cyclic existence, then, we don't want to continue creating the cause for rebirth in samsara, and instead we want to put our energies towards getting out. Okay, so that kind of wisdom, awareness of danger, is quite useful. And unless we have it in our spiritual practice, we aren't going to make any effort to get out of samsara. As long as we think samsara is this great, wonderful place, and we just need to tweak it a little bit to make it super fantastic, then, we're not even going to think about getting out of samsara. So it's only when we really are aware of the danger of cyclic existence, falling to lower realms, getting lost in our own afflictions, and so on. Only when we're aware of that, then the energy comes to oppose it. Okay, panicked fear. So that's the second kind of fear. So panicked fear is problematic because it prevents us from seeing the situation clearly. Okay, so when we're panicked and we're worried and we're apprehensive and nervous about something, are we thinking clearly? Yeah, can your mind think clearly and look at the situation and figure out a way to handle it? Probably not, because we're too enveloped with that feeling of panic, of fear. And so an example His Holiness gives is when I was a child and passed through some dark rooms in the Potala, I feared someone was hiding there. If just a small mouse ran by, I jumped with fright. This kind of fear is due to our imagination. It is mentally created. Okay, so he says it very clearly, looking at his own experience. Yeah? Getting accurate information and changing our view of the situation can counteract it. So, for example, knowing that, there might be a mouse that ran across a dark room in the Potala, and, the mouse is more afraid of you than you are of it, and there's, nobody hiding in the dark. So getting more knowledge, then you calm down about it. Okay. He says, getting accurate information and changing our view of the situation can counteract it. For example, when we feel insecure, fearful, and lonely, we can meditate on the kindness we have received from others so that a sense of connection and gratitude arises in our hearts, and we know we have support. If we are skeptical and suspicious of someone, it is helpful to consider him as another human being, just like us. In that way, our attitude will be more receptive, and we will be able to assess the situation with greater clarity and wisdom. Okay, so, here he's giving a remedy. So now the thing is to remember it. When we feel insecure, fearful, and lonely, what's the antidote? Yeah, meditating on the kindness of others. Okay, so that we feel connection and gratitude. And then we know that we aren't alone in some kind of strange alien universe, but there's support around us, there's kindness around us. Another unrealistic fear may occur when we are threatened with losing our job. Our minds imagine that we will immediately be homeless, sitting on the street with our hungry children. Applying our intelligence, we should investigate whether we are viewing the situation accurately or exaggerating certain aspects. We may find that the situation is unlikely to occur as we imagined it, and even if it did, we have skills to manage it. There are resources in society and in our network of friends and relatives to help us. So we need not paint a dire picture of circumstances that don't exist at this moment. Okay? So if we had time, or let's put it this way, make time and have a discussion, as we usually do in groups of 5 people, about a time when you were worried about something, and your mind was creating just this incredible horror story. You're going to lose your job, and by Monday, you're going to forfeit your house, and by Tuesday, you're out on the street, and by Wednesday, you're starving. Okay? You know how we make up horror stories. So think of a specific example in your life where you did this kind of thing, and then go back and look at the situation with an intelligent, reasonable mind and say, is that really true? Is that going to happen? And second of all, even if it did happen, am I totally bereft of, help and antidotes? And so in that way, with an example from our own life, see how we blow something small up into something enormous and make ourselves totally crazy. Okay? So do a discussion group. Somebody can make up the specific questions. And hopefully you'll learn to laugh at yourself through this. Yeah? And see how ridiculous we are. And how so much of our pain is just mentally created and self-inflicted. During the last talk I gave on, Tuesday night before we left Singapore. So one young woman raised her hand, and she said she had just finished, graduated from college. And she said, I've been looking for a job and I can't find a job. And I'm, so worried and so distraught because I haven't been able to find the kind of job that is, the kind of job I work at. And, she said, what do I do? And I said, actually, you're at a special time in your life where you don't have a lot of responsibilities to a family and so on. So it doesn't really matter if you don't find a job. Take the opportunity to travel, to meet new people, to hear new ideas, to explore the world, because this will help you grow much more and, will probably make her an even better employee later on. And she looked at me as if I had asked her to jump into a well that was 10,000 meters deep. That kind of idea was like, no, you can't possibly think like that. And I said, look, don't graduate on Friday and go to work on Monday. And the people in the audience all laughed because I think that's what most of them did. Yeah? Because there's so much pressure in that country. Yeah, so it was really amazing because she was quite worried and just frantic. And I said, look, it's not even a problem. Yeah, give yourself a break, and it could be a good opportunity for you. Yeah, but I think it was difficult for her to actually believe what I said, because it had been so much inculcated. Yeah, you graduate on Friday and you go to work on Monday. Even better is if you go to work on Saturday. Yeah. Don't even wait. Don't even take the weekend off. Go right to work. Yeah? Okay, some people look at the political, economic, social, and environmental situation of the world and develop a wisdom fear that inspires them to work to prevent harm to the planet and to its living beings. So that's a good kind of wisdom fear. You look at that situation, you say, boy, we need to act now and do something clearly to prevent harm to the planet and to the living beings on it. And so you get a good motivation to really contribute to solving the problem. Okay? Looking at the same situation, not a different situation, same situation, other people develop a despondent fear. Oh, look, we got this new climate report, and, we only have a few years left to really avoid catastrophic change, and there's no way we're going to do that because the governments just won't cooperate. And the whole world's going to fall apart, and they get despondent and feel depressed and hopeless. Looking at the same situation that other people looked at and felt energized to act from. Okay, so this is such a good example how the same situation can be looked at in two totally different ways and bring two totally different experiences of either suffering or happiness, depending upon the way you look at it. Okay? So talking about this despondent fear, such a discouraged mental state immobilizes these people, and their wish to help gets lost amid waves of despair. To counter this, we must constantly maintain our compassion and keep our hearts open so that no matter what others' responses are, we remain earnest. So whether all the other countries join in to work against climate change, doesn't matter, we still need to do it. Yeah. So we're not going to say, well, I'm only going to vow to do that when everybody else vows to do it. Yeah. No, we should say, look, it needs to be done. I'm committing to doing it. Mm-hmm. So courage comes from the way we regard situations. For example, from one viewpoint, the current situation in Tibet is dire. From another, there is hope. Focusing on the positive while being aware of but not discouraged by the negative enables us to make every effort to improve conditions. Okay, so we have a realistic attitude. We're not ignoring negative things that could possibly happen. We're acknowledging them, that they're there, but we're not exaggerating them, and we're not letting the mind get despondent and discouraged and panicked because of it. Okay? And so in that way, we can work to improve the situation. One single practice or method alone cannot develop courage. It requires contemplation of several topics over a period of time. These topics, so remember them. Next time you need to develop courage, here's the antidote. Okay, so these topics include the preciousness of our human life, the potential of ourself and all others to become fully awakened Buddhists, the compassionate awakening activities of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the life stories of the great masters, the kindness we have received from all sentient beings, and love, compassion, and taking others' suffering and giving them our happiness. These will uplift and balance the mind so that we then view situations from a broad perspective. Yeah, so when we train our mind to look at things from a very broad perspective, there's always ways to be optimistic and find hope. Whereas if we look at things from a very negative perspective, we may just throw up our hands and say, there's nothing that we can do. Okay, so coming back to that example of the government shutdown, we can look at it and say, well, maybe having a government shutdown and enough people being unhappy with having the government shutdown could really mobilize the citizens to speak more clearly to our elective representatives and, vote out of office the ones who are uncooperative and, dig in their heels and vote into office the ones who put country above party. Yeah? So it could help doing that. Otherwise, if we look at it, we say, oh, the government can't function. This is terrible. The whole country's falling apart. And, what to do except go cry and have a drink and go shopping, which always remedies the problem, right? Okay? So, we have to think about these things so that we can practice them and keep our mind steady. Yeah, like when I think of the government shutdown, I'm not freaked out about it. I'm just kind of stepping back and looking at it and saying, now this is going to be interesting. How because I can't do anything about it at this point, except call my Congress people. But I already know our two senators are going to be against the wall, and our Congresswoman will be for the wall, and I don't think either of them are going to change their minds. Okay. So I'm kind of like stepping back and looking at it and saying, this is going to be real interesting and I want to see what happens. Because, when you study human beings and how human beings work and how groups of human beings work, you can learn a lot, about how people function and what kind of messages get through to people. And also, I think the whole thing is bordering on absurdity and is really rather humorous. Yeah. And I have more the attitude of, well, let's just see what happens here. If I could do something to change it, I certainly would. But I think until the next election comes around, probably not. But people in states, where maybe your Congress people will change their minds about different things, and you call or write or whatever. In addition to courage, we need confidence. To develop this, I keep in mind some basic beliefs. Human nature is gentle and compassionate. That's a good basic belief to have, isn't it? As a way to look at life. If you have that as your baseline attitude toward looking at people and at life, you're going to be a much happier person, no matter what happens. Okay. Each and every one of us does not want suffering, and we have a right to try to overcome it. Yeah? If we have that kind of attitude too, again, we're more hopeful, we're more invigorated. All beings have the potential to become wise, altruistic Buddhists. If we contemplate that, again, wow, there's so much opportunity for change for hope, for optimism. Okay. Reflecting on these gives me inner strength and determination, a compassionate motivation, and a clear, beneficial goal give me self-confidence and destroy doubts. In other words, confidence arises not from being successful in our projects, but from engaging in them with a wise and kind motivation. Okay, underline that one. Okay, yeah. Self-confidence arises not from being successful in our practices and going around saying, look at me, I did that, I achieved this. Okay, but the self-confidence comes from engaging in them with a wise and kind motivation. So whether we're successful or not, or the degree to which we are successful, there's still peace in our heart because we approach the situation with wisdom and with kindness, not with belligerence, not with a mind that, I'm going to get my way at all cost, not with a mind of, I don't care what happens to other people. Okay? So that our heart can remain somehow balanced and open as we're working our way through the situation. Human beings have remarkable intelligence, which, if applied correctly, can solve problems and conflicts. Fatalistic attitudes are useless. We have the capacity to prevent hardships and improve what is good. We must do our best to use our abilities in a constructive way. If we make every effort and still fail, then we need not have regrets. We can accept what happens. Why? Because we made every effort and, we can't control everything, but we did whatever was possible. And so we have no regrets. Our conscience is clear. We know that we weren't lazy through the whole situation. So we can accept what happens. However, if due to lack of care or hope, negative things happen, that is extremely sad. So if we throw up our hands and say, it's useless, the world's, going to hell in a handbasket, so, I won't even try to do something, then if the situation gets worse or a new bad situation arises, we won't feel so good because we'll think, I could have maybe done something about that, but instead I allowed myself, I enabled myself just to be distraught and to go through the situation upset and hopeless and crying and making a story. Yeah. And then it doesn't go the way you want, so of course you feel even worse than before. Okay, so you're seeing how our experiences of different situations depend so much on our own mind, not from the situation as an objective entity. Okay, then the next section is hope, desire, and acceptance. Just as fear has two aspects, one to abandon and one to cultivate, so do hope, desire, and acceptance. For example, when we hope for good things for ourselves, a new house, a good job, a wonderful family, money, material possessions, all these kinds of things, we become distracted from our spiritual concerns and entrenched in attachment. Dharma texts that speak of abandoning and wait a minute. Yeah, wait a minute. Dharma texts that speak of abandoning all hopes are referring to these hopes concerning worldly gain that inevitably let us down. Okay? So you've read Dharma things that talk about hopes and fears? abandoning hopes and fears. So here, before he was saying how important hope was. Yeah, it's important to have hope and optimism. And here he's speaking of a different kind of hope, that is the hope for good samsaric results. Okay? And that kind of hope, is embedded in attachment, embedded in samsara, and isn't going to help us at all. Whereas the other kind of hope, when we really see people's ability and that everybody wants happiness and not suffering and has a right for it, that kind of hope invigorates us. Okay, making sense? So we need, in our own experience, to be able to spot when these two different kinds of hope arise in our own experience. Okay, we can talk about different kinds of hope. We can talk about different kinds of fear. But unless we can pinpoint them in our own experience, reading and knowing all this isn't going to help us. Okay, we have to be able to find these things in our mind, and when it's the kind of invigorating hope, know how to enrich it, and when it's the kind of samsaric hope, know how to subdue it, without getting these two kinds of hope confused. And same thing with the fear, to be able to see when it's a wisdom awareness of danger and how that can benefit us and help us take preventative steps, and then to really see when it's a panicky sense of fear that really immobilizes us because we can't think clearly, and then to be able to calm ourselves down, and get rid of the drama that we're creating in our own mind about how terrible things are going to be. You know that drama? Yeah? Okay. No matter what situations we are in, we should not lose hope. So this is the good hope. Okay, we shouldn't lose. Losing hope and sinking into a defeatist attitude are the real causes of failure. Underline that one. Okay, because when there's failure, what do we usually think are the causes? Yeah, other people messed up, or I messed up. Okay, and His Holiness are saying, the real causes of failure are losing hope and sinking into a defeatist attitude. So if those are the real causes of hope, and we can identify them in our own mind and change those attitudes, because every attitude can be changed. Any of our negative attitudes can be changed. Then, we can overcome the causes of failure. We have human lives, and with our unique human intelligence and our human lives, we have human lives with our unique human intelligence, and these give us the capacity to overcome problems. Therefore, we should be calm and wisely investigate various alternatives rather than throwing up our hands in despair, which often makes the problems worse. So apparently this is what was happening at the Capitol yesterday and today. The paper described it as, the Capitol was being totally dysfunctional because everybody was running around in this panic of fear, trying to avoid political blame and trying to figure out how to blame somebody else. And so couldn't think clearly, couldn't have the right priorities to think of what's good for the country. And, ran around, and at the end were able to accomplish nothing. Okay. Okay, now he's going to be talking, because this is about hope, desire, and acceptance. So now he says the negative desire is related to attachment and keeps us bound in cyclic existence. In contrast, desire can also refer to a positive aspiration, such as the desire to meditate on equanimity or the desire to become a Buddha. Such desires are not based on self-grasping or self-preoccupation. They have positive goals and increase our joyous effort to attain what is worthwhile. So the English word desire is a tricky one in Buddhism because the English word desire can have both a positive and a negative connotation. And, if you translate a word in Buddhism which refers to attachment, okay, which is a negative mental factor, if you translate that as desire, and you translate having a positive virtuous aspiration as desire, then people who are new to Buddhism, when they hear, oh, desire is a cause of samsara, then they think all desire, even the virtuous aspirations, are a cause of samsara, and that you're supposed to abandon wanting anything because all desire is afflictive. Okay, and then if you think like that, then your ideal of the perfect Buddhist practitioner is somebody who sits on a log and is a bump on that log and just goes, duh, I have no desire. Okay, now if you look at our teachers, are they bumps on the log? No. Yeah. Do they have ideas? Yes. Do they have preferences? Yes. Okay. Do they have opinions about different things? Yes. Do they have desire to accomplish certain goals? Yes. Okay. But is that desire based on attachment to worldly outcomes? Are they seeking money, material wealth, social status, offerings, fame, power? If we're seeking any kind of worldly gain, then it's the negative kind of desire. But for holy beings who've been practicing for a long time, their desire is for virtuous outcomes. And those desires are quite good. And that's what helps the bodhisattvas and helps the Buddhas enact their awakening influence to lead sentient beings to full awakening. Okay? So this is important because, every time you have an intro Buddhist course, this question comes up. And people say, Buddhism say that desire is bad, attachment is bad, so wanting anything is bad. So then I should be without any wants, any preferences, any ideas. And what does that leave you with? Duh. Okay? And then, but that doesn't seem right. That kind of person who just sits there in a stupor and goes, duh, that isn't our image of a bodhisattva, is it? So something is wrong in the way we're thinking, because it's not that all desire should be abandoned. The one that's non-virtuous that should be abandoned, but the one that's going for virtuous aims is great, and we should enhance that one. Acceptance, too, has two sides. The disempowering kind of acceptance is acquiescence, accepting something unpleasant with a disconsolate heart. Yeah. Such acceptance leads us to despondency and destroys our enthusiasm for life and for our Dharma practice. So this acceptance is, the whole thing is screwed up. There's nothing to do. Okay, that attitude. If you have that attitude, where's your life going to go?
Down the toilet.
Down the toilet. Yeah? Okay, so that's the wrong kind of acceptance. The good kind of acceptance acknowledges and accepts our own and others' faults and failures, and at the same time wants to improve in the future. There is no use in fighting the reality of the present moment, but we know we can change and improve in the future. So we accept what is in the present, but we don't accept it as something that's being permanent, that can never change. Rather, we know that we can change the causes and conditions and make the whole situation different in the future. So that gives us hope and enthusiasm. Okay. We accept the present suffering, for the causes of it have been created and are already ripening. Future suffering, however, can still be prevented, so our mind remains optimistic. By accepting the present situation, our time and energy are not consumed in anger or grief. So somebody who's tracking mistakes, yeah? Okay, so page 66, that paragraph, it should be our time and energy are not consumed instead of is not consumed. Okay? Are not consumed in anger or grief, and we can direct ourselves instead to purifying the causes for future suffering, avoiding the creation of more such causes, and creating the causes for future happiness. So again, there's an antidote for us. So it might be good to have a little book of antidotes. Everybody's into making little books now. Yeah. So the little book of antidotes, make your own, because he just gave us a whole bunch in here. And then, refer back to them when you need it. Okay. Next section, comparing ourselves with others and self-worth. Although all sentient beings are equal in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, each of us has different talents and weaknesses. We can acknowledge that others are better than us in terms of education, health, physical appearance, social strength, wealth, and so on. But that need not lead to jealousy. It is a simple acknowledgement of what is. Okay? Underline, but that need not lead to jealousy. Okay? It's just acknowledging, okay, somebody has this talent or ability that is better than mine. Okay? That's great. I'm glad people here know how to fix the toilet. I'm glad, Venerable Tarka is working on the water system. I have no idea what's going on. All the different projects we have going, I'm glad that there's competent people who understand them better than I do. Yeah. Because really think, if we get jealous of other people, think, do I want to have that same responsibility? Do I have that background and knowledge to do that job that they're doing that I'm jealous of? Okay. Problems begin if we begin to think, since I am less than, I am hopeless. Okay, that person is better than me. There's nothing I can do. I'm never going to be as good. Everybody is going to know that I'm not as good. There's no way I can change that, and I feel inferior and hopeless. Yeah, our wrong syllogisms. Comparing ourselves with others and feeling hopeless is the result of a narrow outlook, for we see only our weaknesses and ignore our potential. Here we should remember that although the person is more successful than we are, she is also a human being just as we are, and that we can have the same potential to succeed. It is also important to remember that each of us, that's one thing to remember. Then second one, it is also important to remember that each of us has our own unique good qualities and talents. Comparing ourselves to others is like comparing apples and cars. They may both be red, but they are useful in different situations. Okay, so it's good to appreciate both of them. Similarly, it's good that people have different interests, talents, and abilities. By pooling these together, all of us benefit. We can rejoice in the good qualities of others and rejoice in our own too, even though our good qualities and their good qualities may be different. Okay, so this gets into why living together with a group of like-minded people enables you to accomplish things that you could never accomplish on your own. Yeah, because on our own, we don't have all the skills and knowledges, and let alone the time and energy to do everything. But when we are together with a group and we have a common aim and we share our abilities, then, everybody can take charge of different elements. We're all working for the same goal, and then we can really do a lot together. Okay, so this is, a benefit of living in a monastery. Some people often make black and white distinctions with no middle ground. If something good happens, they become too happy and excited. And if something bad happens, they become discouraged and depressed. Life is complex. Suffering is bound to happen, and good things come as well. When good things occur, some people still do not feel content and push themselves to have more and better until they collapse. Overachievers beware. This is speaking of you. With this kind of attitude, if they see their neighbor is more successful, they succumb to jealousy and hopelessness. All this is avoidable with a wider perspective on life. Okay. The next section is counteracting depression. Okay. Some types of severe clinical depression appear to have chemical component in the brain, but here we will examine the psychological aspect of depression. So really staking out. The psychologists I have spoken with tell me that in large part depression is due to a lack of affection, love, and compassion in the family and the community. I believe that we human beings are by nature social animals. Our basic nature is such that we appreciate the affection of others, and when we receive insufficient affection or are deprived of it altogether, we become unhappy and listless. The techniques to counter depression depend very much on the individual, whether he or she follows a spiritual tradition, and if so, which tradition. A non-believer can reflect that human nature is gentle, that we have experienced some form of love and compassion from many people since we were born. Since we have received much kindness from others throughout our lives, we have received much kindness from others throughout our lives. Sometimes we are blind to the kindness around us. Other times we are dissatisfied with it and wish it were more or better. This is basically a big problem that we have, okay? There's lots of people that care about us. There's lots of opportunities, but our mind gets so narrow that we think nobody's kind, nobody's going to help me, I don't have any possibilities, everybody else does. You know, it's that childhood chant. Everybody hates me, nobody loves me, think I'll eat some worms. Remember that one? Yeah, I don't think any of us ate worms. I didn't. Okay, but that's the mood we're in. Okay, do you have that in Russian?
No, but people really like this when you
When I said it, they liked it, huh?
person to love.
Okay. Here it is good to cultivate, and then the other thing is, you know, we may see that there's content, you know, there's kindness around us, but we're dissatisfied with it. We want more kindness. We want the kindness to be shown in a different way. Okay. And people just aren't helping us in the way we want or demand them to help us. Okay. And so we feel depressed. Here it is good to cultivate contentment with the affection and kindness we have received and to rejoice in it. See its positive effects on our life. From the time we were born until now, all our happiness in one way or another has depended on the kindness of others. Just the fact that we are alive is due to the kindness we've received from so many other beings. To counteract depression, Buddhists can think in two ways. Okay, so first, we develop a sense of our own potential by reflecting on Buddha nature. No matter how confused or weak we may sometimes be on a superficial level, deep down our Buddha nature is there. On the most basic level of having a mind, no difference exists between the Buddha and us. Each person has the natural Buddha nature, which is the emptiness of inherent existence of the mind, as well as the evolving Buddha nature, which is those factors that can be increased and whose continuity will continue to awakening. So those two kinds of Buddha nature. Thus, everyone has the potential to become fully awakened. So if you really think about that, it becomes hard to be depressed and to justify, you know, letting our mind go into depression, because we all have the Buddha nature. Okay, and it's something that can never be removed from our mind, you know, no matter what. And so there's no reasons for depression and despondency if we have that big mind that really sees the big picture. Second, consider the nature of cyclic existence. At present, we are under the control of afflictions and karma. As long as that situation exists, some kind of problem will be present. For example, when our body is ill, we experience pain. We can expect that and accept it. Worrying about the pain is useless. If we do not want the pain, we must remove its causes. If it is possible to remove the cause, we should try and do that. If it's not possible, no benefit comes from worrying. Okay, so when, you know, our body is ill, we experience pain. Yeah, then just worrying about our pain. You know, oh, this hurts, what's going to happen? You know, they're going to have to do surgery and, you know, take out my entire belly. You know, they're going to chop off 2 arms and 2 legs and, you know, and we develop these, you know, the horror stories, okay, and then get depressed and worried and panicky and fretting and so on. And His Holiness is saying, you know, when our body's ill, this is the nature of samsara. This is the nature of being ill. So better just accept the situation and then apply the various antidotes to it to change your mind so that even you may be experiencing some kind of physical pain, mentally your mind can be balanced, it can be happy and peaceful. Okay? And if it's not possible to do anything to alleviate the pain, then no sense worrying about it. So this is one of his verses in Shantideva's text. If you can do something about it, no reason to be angry and worried. If you can't do something about it, no reason to be angry and worried. Okay? So we need to remember that whenever we're in a difficult situation. We can think in a similar way about the nature of cyclic existence. As long as we have a body and mind that are under the influence of ignorance, problems will arise. This is reality. It is to be expected in cyclic existence, and we must accept it. If we do not like these problems, we should try to eliminate their causes, afflictions and polluted karma, and attain liberation. This gives us enthusiasm to practice the Dharma and seek nirvana. I remember one time I was talking to a Dharma friend and belly aching about something, I forget what it was. And he said to me, "This is samsara, what do you expect?" And it was like, that shut me up real quick. Because it was right. What in the world am I expecting? I'm expecting to live in samsara and be perfectly happy and never have any problems. That is totally unreasonable. Yeah. So if I'm miserable because I have unreasonable expectations, then it's like a hot potato. Drop the hot potato so you don't get burned. Drop your unrealistic expectations and just accept, the situation for what it is. Depression also arises by focusing too much on our own situation and problems. Look around at others and see that everyone suffers in one way or another. Reflecting deeply on this, our hearts will open and the strength of our love and compassion for others will increase. Okay, now the next section is on disagreement and conflict, but that's several pages long, and it's almost time to stop. So maybe you have some questions or comments so far?
Yeah, comment. There was a nun here from the Luminary Temple. What was her name? Zichi. She had said something that her teacher had said to her, which kind of sounded harsh at the time, but I thought about it later. I thought that was really a compassionate thing to say. She said, "Don't get hung up on your own petty problems." And then seeing it here made it come back up in my mind. Depression arises from focusing too much on our own petty problems.
And that's what we get hung up on, our own petty problems. And we make them into national disasters. And they're not big deals. But you can really see how the self-centered mind jumps in and makes a mountain out of a molehill.
This point of view might be just easy for me to say because I'm not really going to be in it, but in thinking about this shutdown and 800,000 plus people out of a job, well, it's Christmas and it's the holiday season, and so this will allow people to spend time with their family rather than rushing around. And maybe if they're really in a desperate state, they can spend some time with their friends or relatives take them in, and so they can take advantage of this and make it something maybe quite beautiful.
Yeah. If they can twist it, to see it from a different perspective, because it is what it is. And if you're on furlough, enjoy. Yeah. Like you said, be with your family, have a nice, an extended holiday time.
Actually, talk to your kids.
Yeah, talk to your kids.
When this happened back in 2011, I knew a couple people that were veterans, and their checks came in very late. And some of them couldn't make their land payments and lost their land over just a little bit of time, because the veterans' checks are already so late. They're so behind. They're trying to catch up on that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, to see how our actions influence people. Yeah. It's not just a contest of who's going to win and who can we blame, and who's going to have more political power. It's like this is influencing the lives of real people and impacting especially vets who the people in Washington claim to respect so much. But when it comes down to helping those vets get their paychecks or their benefit checks, they don't think about it.
I wanted to appreciate the clarity of the distinction of the two kinds of acceptance. Because especially, I think, when we've been sharing at the UU class, the working with anger, and also a little bit with the compassion class, getting clear that accepting, understanding that things are the way they are as an antidote is different from just lying down and letting the whole world run over you.
Yeah.
And so, we've explained it many times, but the clarity of that two distinctions here is really helpful.
Yeah, it needs to be explained many times. And people, having heard the explanation, really need to watch their own minds to see where it takes them. Because you can hear the explanation and then just revert to your old patterns of, oh yeah, I accept the whole thing screwed up and nothing I can do. Yeah. And many people go there just out of habit, and we don't need to, because it's not true that the whole situation's hopeless.